Hey everyone, Black Knight here. Just wanted to throw in my 2 cents to the discussion about the banning of the Compendium War Scrolls. So essentially, this is a response video to the Warhammer topic of the week. So, why are we even talking about this? So, as I understand it, the guys that run the South Coast GT, which are the same guys that do the Heel and Hammer podcast, which I love listening to, when they announced the South Coast GT rules for this year, they initially put in the rule pack that all the War Scrolls that are Compendium War Scrolls, so basically everything that hasn't moved over to like an official Age of Sigmar faction, it's like all the old heroes or the entire factions of Tomb Kings and Bretonnians, they would not be allowed at the tournament. This caused a bit of an uproar in the community, as I understand it, and they decided to roll back that decision and allow them this year. But basically you can imagine that next year they're thinking about taking those all out. So Vince Venturella, in case you somehow stumbled upon my channel accidentally without knowing who Vince is, what I'm even talking about, go check out his channel and his videos that he's talked about, or where he discusses this topic. That you stop this video right now and go watch those. Also, some things that I've watched or listened to were MC1 Gamer's video response to this, as well as Doom and Darkness's response. Both very valid responses and fun to listen to, so I'd go check those out as well. So here's basically what I think, and I'm just going to concentrate on the things that, just a couple of things that Vince brought up in his video. So the number one thing that Vince talked about, and which personally I agree with the most, is just to do nothing. And as this picture shows, remember these guys dominating the 8th edition Dogs of War? They can't even tell you what exactly unit this is. But yeah, remember them dominating the tables? No, you don't, because they didn't. The argument that has been put forth for banning Compendium War Scrolls is that because they're no longer supported and you can no longer buy the models, people won't know what theirs might be facing if I bring my Bretonnians and they haven't seen them in a year. They will have no idea what they are, and it's impossible to play against them, and so it's just easier just to ban them completely. As we all experienced with Dogs of War, this was never an issue. So for those of you that might be too new to the game, from 5th edition to 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy, they brought out the Ravening Hordes booklet. I can't quite remember if Dogs of War were a part of that, but like the Chaos Dwarves were, I think Dogs of War were as well. And that's basically the last official tip of the hat that this faction got. But even as a few years ago, I was looking at the rules for an Adepticon Warhammer rules packet, and this was still listed as a valid faction that you could bring. Now, obviously, Games Workshop hadn't supported the army in a while, and the community had picked it up and developed their own army book, and they were even allowing that. So, and again, we didn't see these guys just because they're not being supported and the models are hard to get, doesn't mean that they just roll through everything. And I understand that some people think some of the units, I think the Serpent Rider guys from the Tomb Kings, I think that they're too good, and so the best solution is just to ban them completely. And honestly, the power level seems to be that everything is good that Games Workshop is releasing, so over time those units will just fall out of favor due to being hard to find them in the first place, them just even something not being constantly updated will basically eventually that those things, you just won't see them on the table. For example, even you can just look back at 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy, Bretonnians. They hadn't been supported. Well, they were, I'll quote unquote, they were being supported. You could buy their models from Games Workshop, but they hadn't gotten a new rule set in over 10 years since 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy. Now, of course, you have people like me that are slowly still working on their stuff, or people that like that and pick them up, but you didn't see them a whole lot. And that's just because they never got like a new army book like all the other races did. So eventually it will just, if as history tends to repeat itself, will fade out, and you won't see the older Compendium War Scrolls anyway. So I don't understand what the big idea is. But one option is to do nothing. Another option is to completely ban all of them. Completely annihilating everyone that might have just started coming back. I know in my area, after the generals, so we tried Age of Sigmar for a while. It didn't really work out, and I've developed a campaign rule set using some of the stuff from the General's Handbook, and we're going to be starting that next month. Now, if Games Workshop, with their whole attitude, which I think is awesome, with the as shown in the General's Handbook, and their own basically attitude with their social media sites and outreach to the community of play the way you want to play, of hey, in open play, you gave us open play, narrative play, matched play, and then all the rules, all points for all the Compendium War Scrolls, and then to say, by the way, in the new General's Handbook, we're just getting rid of all of that. You don't get to play with your toys anymore. Move on. Just goes against the philosophy that they've shown in the last half a year or so. And yeah, it would be really hard. Again, over time, you will rebuild all that stuff back, but it's just unnecessary. Just an unnecessary move just to ban something completely, because you want people to buy the new stuff. So I don't think this is a good solution at all, remotely. And I really hope that GW doesn't listen to the Heel and Hammer guys, if that's what they want to do. And the third one is a compromise. So watching Vince Venturella's video, he talks about the different formats of play that you might have, like what's seen in Magic the Gathering, or maybe if any of you might be familiar with the Hearthstone, a game that's kind of based off of Magic the Gathering that Blizzard puts out, how there's different formats. So if somehow you've stumbled upon this and have no idea what I'm talking about, in those games, basically you have, since they're card-based games, the newer stuff, like the last, I'm just going to arbitrarily say, let's say the last 5 card sets that have come out, those are the one type of format. I'll just call that the standard format. And then if you want to play with the older cards, let's say you're 10 sets of cards in, and you still want to play with the cards that you got in the first set, you can play in the legacy format. Again, arbitrary naming by myself. So basically, if you want to play with all the new things, you can play in that. If we were to translate that for Age of Sigmar, say like, hey, if you want to play, this is going to be a tournament that's a standard tournament. You only get to play with all the War Scrolls that have come out in the last 2 years. Anything that's old or Compendium, you don't get to play with. But then I also could have a tournament that's a legacy tournament where you can play with whatever the hell you want, bring whatever War Scroll, Compendium or not, and you're fine. I think that's a good compromise. I'd have no problem with that in my own area. If I were to play in something or try to get people to play and run something, I'd probably just only do the legacy format And then over time, as people start to see, as new things come out and people kind of flow to the new hotness that comes out and just want to paint something new rather than playing with the same thing that they've had forever, eventually people will have something to play in both formats. I think that's a good compromise. So that's basically my 2 cents. Again, I would hope that Games Workshop doesn't ban anything. I really hope they just don't do anything. And again, TOs can do whatever the hell you want. You can make everyone wear red pants to your tournament if you want. That's fine. But I wouldn't participate in any tournament that just bans everything. Just go with the flow, man. Let nature take its course, and over time, the old stuff is just gonna fall off the boat. And that way you have people like me that take forever to paint stuff. Let me bring in my Bretonnians still on their square bases, and it'll be fine. So let's just all enjoy the game. Don't have to get your band hammer on. And yeah, there we go. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.